Welcome to episode 5, volume 5, whatever we're calling these things, of ZenMadman's Nutty Pot Limit Omaha journey, if that's what we're calling it today. Thank you for subscribing, Daniel Nash. Welcome to the stream. Let's just get right into the action here. I've got a hand. Ooh, did I forget to import? Maybe. This could be tricky. That's fine. Okay, I have 2 pair, which is generally a good hand to have in Pot Limit Omaha, not because you can use all those cards. You can only use 2 of them at a time, but because it's 2 ways to flop a set. I could catch an 8, I could catch a 3. The odds of that are probably in the vicinity of 4 to 1, 3.5 to 1, something like that. But there was a raise and a re-raise, and basically they already put most of the money in, so it's not going to play well that way. If it was a raise and a cold call and there was money left behind, it would be a pretty good spot, but as it turns out, not the best spot. Wow. But I was doing pretty good against those hands before the flop anyway. So we've got we're just gonna say wild with short stack anyway, with short stack at least. Right, so because we're on this... Oh. Hello. Because we are on this thing... Oh, cool. Yeah. Yeah. If you want. So yeah, I've been studying some more PLO recently, kind of trying to transition into mostly playing it. I find it it's just more fun than No Limit. I spent a fair amount of time trying to study No Limit, and it just never clicked for me the same way Limit Hold'em did. But PLO, not to say that it's like clicked at a really high level yet or anything, but it makes a certain kind of intuitive sense to me in some ways, and it just feels more fun. I don't know. I like playing fun games. It's a game. I feel like there's no reason that we shouldn't have our poker also be fun, right? So anyway, here we are. I'm trying to focus on each hand as it gets played, not just my hands, but the ones I fold as well. That'll kind of be a little touch and go, still trying to kind of find my Twitch rhythm, but we do what we can. So we have a poster, right? So that was not a limp, that was a post, and then we have an ISO of the post, which, at these stakes, we use the word ISO sometimes to refer to someone raising behind a limper, or in this case a poster, but they didn't get isolated. There was a small blind cold call. So we have a 3-way pot. They c-bet the flop. That board's going to hit a lot of the rundowns in their range, the big cards in their range. The 10 paired, I don't know how much the out of position player is supposed to be. Wow, what can they beat? They must have had like some sort of... But they're blocking all the wraps. That's hilarious. That is probably not the way they were thinking that hand was going to go. Let's take a look at what they actually had. Okay. I'm going to... Let's see. I'm going to write this down. Oh, I think I still have that thing anyway. Let me see. Yeah, we'll do this. Okay, there we have that. And I think I will actually... All right, sorry, I'm a little engaging with chat, but how do we do this? I want to try to remove a message because I don't want you to dox yourself. But, you know what? Not that many people watch my stream yet anyway. Yeah. but I don't want to do it in a way that oh, sorry. Okay. I'm going to focus on the play for a minute. Um, it's double suited. It's pretty nice. I don't think this is quite what I'm going to be three betting with. One of the sort of axioms that I picked up from the Pot Limit Omaha Launchpad is respect the under the gun range, or the low jack range, as I prefer to call it. I think three betting with ace 9 8 3 double suited might not be respecting that range. I am going to mark the hand in progress, though, as more of a. What happened the previous hand? Oh, yikes. Um, okay, so interesting. Um, they clearly cold called with a worse hand than I had behind me. Kings like these, I think, are an open. I have a suit, and my two side cards actually do a thing. That's kind of the heuristic that I've picked up from, if you have kings, you at least want a suit, and you want the other two cards to not be useless. Or if you have kings and then the other two cards are like particularly useful, that's also good. But in the low jack, I think we do fold some kings, kind of the weaker ones. Um, right. So this isn't really the board that we're hoping for when we get a three-way flop. Kings and queens, cool, but not that cool in Pot Limit Omaha. Second nut flush draw, also nice to have, but what outs do I have to the nuts? I have two outs to a king, which would be the second nuts, and I have two outs to a queen, which would give me like the fourth nuts at this point. I'm just going to check fold because I'm a big old nit, and it's just so easy for them to have a queen, and if they have a queen, then my flush draw is going to be very dicey. And here I have another limper here. This person, I'm gonna give them the straightaway upgrade to green. Okay, so I think this hand is pretty decent, but the connectivity is more weighted towards the bottom. This person doesn't have any money, and I'm out of position. I'm actually going to call because I think this player behind me is. I think they're just going to call with everything. And so far from what I've seen against them, I feel like there's someone I probably want to play against. We'll see how true that is. Are they going to. Yeah. See, certain players I'd be very concerned they're going to raise behind me, but this player less so. And I don't think we've seen them be too aggressive after the flop so far. The 315 with bottom two pair, if there's a lot of money left back, I'm not very interested in this flop, or I feel a lot worse about it. But given that that player's all in, I think it's a much better situation. And because this player behind me is fairly passive, I think there's a fair chance that I'm going to be able to just check this down and win. And unfortunately, the one player hit their gut shot, but it looks like I got the money in pretty decent on the flop. And my hand, just pure equity-wise, against that hand is doing pretty good. The person behind me did have a flush draw that they called with on the flop and a gut shot. So they're doing all right as well. I definitely lean towards, well, I don't know, playing, maybe too many double suited hands, and then as a result of being aware of that, maybe trying not to do that, maybe playing too few is possible, right? That's a thing that can happen sometimes. We become aware of a weakness and then we overcorrect. All right, so this board, there's been a raise and two callers, and now a full pot bet on 9-7 deuce. I missed where the raise came from. I wouldn't be surprised if it's from this person who's betting, first of all, because they're betting, and second of all, because the other players have so far been fairly passive or extremely passive pre-flop. The turn is definitely a nut changing card, right? It changes the texture of the board and makes a straight possible, two straights possible. Now there's three straights possible, and they go full pot. Are they going to have? Okay, so they turned the second nuts. and they have a straight flush if you can use 3 from your hand and 2 from the board, which you cannot, sadly, in that case. Oh, hi, welcome. We have people, awesome, in the chat. The day that I feel least prepared because I just recorded a Star Wars podcast about the new Bad Batch episode. Um, but it's great to have everyone here. What I'm doing is I'm basically trying to teach myself to play PLO better. And by teach myself, I mean using various resources that are available on the internet and then streaming every day at 10 a.m. Pacific time, which is a lot of different times, different places in the world. So um, I'm trying to establish that schedule partially for, I think in terms of building a Twitch following, I think that's helpful. Just people know you stream at a particular time. If they like it, they can make it a part of their day or know, okay, if on any given day I'm free at this time, I can watch. But also I'm trying to build routines for myself, right? I built a little bit of a morning routine, and every time I play a session, I do a session review at the end. And that's something that it used to be a habit of mine playing poker, and then I kind of lost the thread somewhere along the line. And this is a way of kind of holding myself accountable to that, where it's like, well, I'm going to do a session review in front of people, so it's going to happen every day. So here we have a limper, and then another limper, and then the button goes for the raise. A fairly tight player in the small blind calls, so I'd say they've probably got a decently strong range. The button has been pretty passive and played every single hand so far. They're going to have, in theory, all the ace-ace combinations, and probably neither of the other players should have any of those, but you're never quite certain. King-king should feature... I don't know. Are they going to 3-bet most of their king-king out of the small blind? Maybe some weak king-king. They can also have some monster draws. A lot of rundowns really smash this board. The button overcalls. And so if you just made a hand like a straight, maybe if you have a spade blocker, you can do something. But it's, a bit of a treacherous river card for anybody who just made a straight. The fact that there's only like half a pot-sized bet left, if you have a weaker flush, I think you're probably stuck calling this in the out of... Although this person can't be bluffing ever, right? Because there's like only $9 in the side pot. So ace, double fives, and a 4 double suited. So I don't think we need to think that player has a super tight raising range or anything like that. I mean, that's a good hand. But they've got a 22 VPIP, PFR so far. Sorry, they have 100 VPIP. They're playing all their hands. And unfortunately, the one player that busted is gone. I have top pair with, 9 outs to top 2. I think I'm going to go ahead and bet here. I think something like half pot feels about right. I have backdoor flush draw. I've also got the nut blocker and hearts. Ideally, I would have gotten a fold behind me, and then this player in front of me might have come along, but I think this is okay. Let's see, what's my gut shot to? My gut shot's not a nut shot, right? It's second nuts. I've got third nut flush draw. I'm going to check, and I'm not planning on folding against this player. Let's see. I'm like thinking whether I can eke out some value even. They've been playing 100% of their range, though, so where a 3 and a 2 you'd think might be more like bricks, against this player, I don't think they're as brickish because they're playing 100% of their hands, so they have all the hands with a 3 and a deuce in them that most people fold. 3-3-5 queen, I think that's fairly tragic. I'm going to pitch it and top off. Let's see. So if there's any hand that you think is particularly interesting and you would like to see further discussion, if you just type in my 4 hole cards, I will mark it in Poker Tracker and review it at the end of the session. I'll mark the last one just for... Oh no, that's not pre-flop, right? That's just regular review. I think that's pretty standard pre-flop. I think I must have been the hijack because there's a player missing. 100% hands in such a small sample. Yeah, I mean, it's a small sample. But, like, when someone's VPIP is 100, you don't need it. Your sample size is less relevant, I think. Like, we don't know with high confidence that they play 100% of their hands, but we can be pretty confident they're not playing 30% of their hands, right? Um, the margin for error is based on the sample size, but when they're that far out of line, we are not certain yet that they are even capable of folding. He only had ace, king, queen, jack. Oh, and deuce, 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 deuce. Um, yeah, let's see. All right, I'm gonna fold this, and I'm not really gonna mark this person. I think I'm curious whether there's people playing seriously online, pursuing an open limping strategy in some spots. I know some very good live players who do it and have a lot of success. And while it's like fundamentally incorrect in a lot of ways, I think it makes some sense. Some of the arguments I've heard. I won't get too deep into that. Um, but yeah, ace, king, queen, jack is. Oh, on was the four deuce the whole cards or uh the four deuces the board? I like quads on boards. They're the most entertaining because nobody has quads in PLO because the quads are on board. All right, back to the action. 8-6-4 tray. That's not a good hand. We're gonna. What's this? Okay. Just mark that person. So this person's only played 10% of their hand so far. Now more like, what, 18%? Because they've played 2 out of 11 now. Oh, wait. There was a fold. Stop the presses. There was a fold from the player in the small blind now. Not this hand. They folded their big blind even, I think. All right, so the limper goes ahead and bets. This board, I guess it hits a limping range. I mean, I don't really know what a limping range should consist of here. It might consist of some kind of like shaky, rundown-ish hands. That player's kind of tight, so maybe they just limp their range. And if they're kind of tight, then, basically they're either going to smash this board with a rundown, maybe have something that hits a set, or they're going to have a bunch of high cards. And I don't think they're going to bet against these players with a bunch of air. The overwrap got there, right? Jack 10-9, whatever. Are we having some... No, okay. Seems for a moment like we might be having some connection difficulties, which would be tragic. So nobody bet the turn, so it feels like probably nobody has the nuts, but an out-of-position player, this player particularly, I think, might just check anyway, but an out-of-position player with the nuts and no redraws, I don't think necessarily wants to pile in a ton of money. What ended up winning? Kings and eights, okay. But it looks like they had, those were double-suited aces, yeah? Okay, so we'll just make a little note here. Open limp, ace, ace, king, 8, double suited. Keep an eye on that person. All right, so this player, I think, limped, right? And one of the reasons that I make notes on players, it's not like knowing that someone did this or not that. In fact, I'll do it on this player too. What happens on ignition is a player busts or they leave and then they're replaced by a new player and the player number is the same and there's a little yellow N, but if you miss that for a moment, your HUD stats might be laying over for a player who is not the player that played those hands. So I try to avoid that by when somebody has something that kind of stands out, I make a note, and so then I know when a new player shows up, they don't have that note. All right, so we're going to fold this because it is horrible. They're going to take a long time to decide to call. What do you mean horrible? It does have all the suits. All right. So the thing about rainbow hands is when a flush ever comes, you always have a blocker, right? Anytime a flush comes, you always have a blocker. Eh? People don't think about that. Okay. Yeah. When we have four of one suit, another thing that like I say it in jest, but like it's true, right? When we have a rainbow hand and a flush comes, we are always going to have a blocker on it. When we have a monotone hand, one thing I think people don't really think about is, and maybe some people do, but I haven't seen people really talking about it openly anyway. If you have four of a suit and you have the non-nut flush, having four of that suit can then become an asset once you actually make the non-nut flush, because now you're blocking the nuts extra, right? Anytime you make a flush, you're always blocking some combos of the nut flush, but that's a default because you have the flush. But if you have additional, cards of that suit, there is actually some value there. Okay, I think single suited. I play this. Um, Honestly, I really need to put the work in pre-flop, and I haven't done it. So, I don't know, maybe 1 month with the PLO matrix, or I know Jay Nandez has something, and just like after every session, just run every hand and just try to internalize it. Spend like 200 hours, 300 hours in a month, and just try to like be the pre-flop PLO. I think would be helpful in terms of learning my ranges, and also just kind of understanding how preflop works, how it's supposed to work in PLO. All right, so I flop a six card straight, but I've heard that's not actually a good thing. So, I'm out of position. I have two opponents, one of whom plays all of their hands, one who's a little tighter. I don't see a lot of merit in trying to like run this through. There's a lot of turn cards that can give me some equity, but not a strong draw. That's another thing, is that if I do, I can't make the nuts. On the flop, I could have caught an eight of diamonds on the turn and a six of diamonds on the river, and I would have the nuts, because nobody could have 10-8 of diamonds. But it's, not really a good hand. Mm, good to know. So Daniel says it would fold this one. Yeah, it with the short stacks and the blinds, I get that. We don't have the implied odds, and maybe they're a little more likely to try to find some kind of a squeeze. Maybe. I think we definitely don't want to double suited. Maybe what I need is this hand double suited. Um, I definitely don't know that much what I'm doing. I mean, I have the gist of it. Yeah, I mean, if you want to find people who play the game worse and stream, that's possible too. But for me, the theme is more about learning and the process of encountering uncomfortable spots, and then growing from that discomfort. Um, Chris's other friend talks a lot like Chris in some of the humor vectors. All right, so ace 9 6 6. Um, what are these people doing? I don't know. So, for the uninitiated, if somebody has a hand like ace 9 here, now they have ace 9 high instead of top two pair, because there's the trips on board, and you can't use another card from here. The person whose friend you said you are. Anyway, a very the PO guy. Yes, from the PO podcast. A very good friend who I often think of getting in touch with, and then because I have some communication dysfunction, fail to write said emails or Skype messages or whatever. And yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. I need to, yeah, that must be you. Okay. Hi, Chris. It's been too long. Yeah, I honestly I have a whole thing where like I like write emails or whatever in my mind and then I don't send them. I don't know. It's there's a list of people that I need to and want to get in touch with, and you're at the top of it. So it's good to have you stop by, even if it's for a gentle trolling. Bottom rundown to raise from EP. Oh, interesting. Even double suited. Um, oh, that yes, good, good. I've worked on my force projection, my mental force projection. So, um, hopefully that's helped with that as well. Hmm. So yeah, I've been thinking about in terms of what sort of how to approach pre-flop like in this loose environment, right? These games tend to be very loose. This, you can see someone with a 94 VPIP and think, "Wow, that's loose." Like that's slightly looser than your average really loose person in these games. Like we had someone earlier with a 70, 80, whatever. A lot of times I'm at a table with someone playing close to all their hands. And then this is a hand where like if the button were really tight, maybe I think about opening it. But as it turns out, it's not really good. I think if I'm gonna get cold called behind, I don't think it's gonna play very well. But yeah, I think a lot of people the instinct is to play a little looser in loose games because you have players that are like, oh, I want to get in a pot with them. But I think that's probably backwards, especially in PLO, right? Where, once we have a bunch of multi-way pots, we end up, um, in all these multi-way pots, we end up with these situations where, like, our hand, we need less equity, but our share of the pot drops precipitously by having multiple opponents in the hand. And if we're not drawing to the nuts, right, we're not really going to be able to play aggressively or confidently post flop. So yes, double. I like the typo. That is what I call a double suited thrash hand, which is very metal. I imagine trash is where you're going, but thrash. I like thrash. I don't know. I'm a thrash metal fan, but yeah, it's like you've got two cards that kind of work together, two cards that work together. I think a lot of Hold'em players' eyes. I was playing Hold'em last night. That's the problem. I'm all miscalibrated. I was playing Hold'em. You can have one pair and somehow it's good. Um, I did actually recently. I had Jack 10 suited in a Hold'em game. I raise under the gun. I get four callers. The board runs out. On the river, I have Jack high, and my hand is good. So that was five ways. That was pretty fun. Yeah. So someone folded out of turn like on an earlier street. They're just like, I'm just folding. I'm not even waiting for a bet. And I like to think that person had queen high. That's what I like to think. It's not quite the seven way capped pot I played at the 2040 Bellagio where I won the hand with king queen high, because that was a much bigger pot and that was even more fun. But why make a pair if you don't have to? Uh, Most entertaining hand of PLO I think I've ever seen was just like 5, 6, 7 in the morning a couple years ago at the casino, and The board is like queen, 5-5, queen, queen. And the out of position player just goes pot, pot, pot. And on the river, the other person's like, the out of position player tables their hand and they have like 10 high on the river. And the other person's like, oh, I have a 5. And the board's queen, 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 5-5 at the end. So they did not have a 5. They ended up having king high. It would be funny if they had a rundown like 8-7-6-5, and then they lost to 10 high, who'd potted the river. This is like an $1,800 pot that was won by king 8 high that actually called the pot size bet on the river for 600. Just like soul read, right? No, they thought they had they thought they had like a boat or something. They didn't understand how the game worked. So having the ace, is nice for 3-betting, but I think I want the suited ace and maybe something a little better. Again, my 3-betting ranges are further off than my opening ranges. So yeah, save the making for good. Like, why make a pair when king high is good, right? Why even bother to have ace high if jack high is good? Make those hands when they're gonna do you some good. All right, so the big blind's a new player. This is one of those spots where I actually do some over limping, and yeah, tell me it's horrible if it's horrible. I feel like flopping top set against these loose players. Okay, that's why it's horrible, right? That's why it's horrible. So we get raised, and I tell people if you're going to limp, it should generally be with the intention of calling a raise. That's not necessarily a hard and fast rule, but against this player, I don't know. I'm gonna call. Um, Very strong thought process there, right? Okay, so I have a double gutter. Neither of them are to the nuts. I have a flush draw blocker. I'm not blocking any of the pairs on board. I think basically I was trying to flop top set or maybe the straight with a 7-5 and win some money from this person who I think is probably going to make a lot of large mistakes post flop. Yeah, the rake issues is definitely like frequently in my mind. Because it's like, here's the thing though, in a game like this, when you limp, you're gonna pay rake because you're gonna pay rake because nobody raised, right? But when you raise, you kind of know you're gonna pay rake too because people call. Like, I should look at my steal success in these games because I think it's very, very low. So the idea that the bottom of our range is going to do fine because we're raising and we're going to win the blinds without a struggle, I think in these games that's maybe a little optimistic. Now, unfortunately, we lost our friend on our left. Hopefully we'll catch a friend over here on the other side, on the starboard side. I don't know why I'm speaking in ship, but I guess I am. I don't know. All right. Um, hmm. I think this is not quite good for a small blind. Where is it? I'm gonna mark that hand though, mostly for pre-flop, the Jack 7, whatever. Yesterday I only marked one hand, which felt very insufficient, right? Not doing enough of the pre-flop work. I need to get back to using like solvers 2 hours a day. Um, I think Simple has they have an Omaha solver. I haven't really looked into it yet. I was mostly thinking like I should primarily learn pre-flop and get that really solid first, and maybe that's still true. I think there's still something to that. Sorry, 2 hours a day minimum, right? At least 2 hours a day. At least 2 hours a day. All right, so we have a straight, the 9 high straight, right? You want to like always remember how to read the board and stuff, especially for our newer viewers. Yeah, so this is a hand that, like, I don't know, it's pretty. It looks festive. It's very holiday themed, green and red, green and red. But it's a little too wee. Yeah, I've lost the thread a little on studying from time to time. You know, I mean, that's not to say I haven't done any studying, but I certainly haven't maintained those high level of um, the habits, right? Of just doing a certain amount every day, like almost literally every day, and having it feel weird not to do it. Oh, I recently read The Art of Learning for the first time, like actually completed the book and loved it and understand why it has been recommended time and time again. And it was funny though reading it, and then I read my book, Way of the Poker Warrior, and I was like, wow, wow, it looks like I was inspired by the one book, but in truth, if I had read The Art of Learning first, I think I probably would have ended up with a better book that both would have copied it more and less at the same time. I mean, I didn't copy it at all because I hadn't read it, but there's like so many, you know, oh, there's a thing in the rainforest or the jungle, like there's a thing with someone almost getting hit by a car. There's obviously the parallels between martial arts and a game, and some sort of philosophy and a lot of talk about training and stuff, which I don't know. Was I think could have been. I think it's a good book to read at any point in one's life, but it feels particularly useful now. And now I'm actually reading a work of fiction called Shijak by my friend Catherine Yang, who runs a taekwondo school. We came up together and both ran taekwondo schools at the same time, and it's about, you know, training for taekwondo basically and food. The book, like half the book's about food, but I think it's really good. I love it, and I haven't quite finished it yet, so I'm still ready to be disappointed by an ending, but not really though. But yeah, it kind of gets me in the training mood. All right, so this hand looks pretty good before the flop. It looks pretty bad on the flop. I don't think I really want to be c-betting this hand. I think I usually want an ace to at least block ace X. Ace is up. Now I'm going to continue checking and spike a 9 on the river. That's pretty much my plan. You know, they can have a lot of 7x. They were the big blind. They can have some sort of rundowns that hit that. They can also have an ace. I don't think I have a very good blocking hand, and I'm just going to let it go. You know, I think that hand was probably one of the more straightforward hands so far. The player on our right has now an 88 VPIP, which kind of flew under the radar. This I am going to open on the button. Oh, way to make a liar of me, Ignition. Apparently some people fold. And I think I'm gonna mark this hand for, not because I think I should play it in the cutoff, but I'm more curious on the button. I want to see, you know, a pair of tens like this with a little extra, right? 10-8, a suit, and then 8-5. We've got some connectivity there. Not a ton, but a non-zero amount. I'm big into non-zero things. I've been doing a morning routine pretty consistently. Well, this week, 5 days in a row. Not a every single day exactly the same morning routine, but certain components every morning. A smoothie with a little time out on the porch to get some kind of mindfulness in. I've been doing a 5-minute meditation that I realized I've been having a lot of trouble meditating for the last year or so, kind of trying to do it, but not really ever getting consistent. And reading Josh's book, I came around to the realization that my problem was that I was like trying to do too much, which obviously meditating, you don't really want to try to do too much. That's almost antithetical, right? But I've just lowered my expectations to say I'm just going to spend 5 minutes listening to this like streaming water and listening to my breathing, focusing on my breathing. And other thoughts will come and go, and that's fine. And I have no expectations. no effort to try and make the experience one thing or another. And I found that the times actually passed way faster than when I had these expectations of what I was like trying to do by meditating. And over time, I think that will grow to be, more and more that way. But I'm not particularly concerned about it. Just been really enjoying the experience. And then, yeah, so today I didn't quite get my uninterrupted morning routine because I recorded said Star Wars podcast, Star Wars Universe podcast, hosted by Matthew Fox, the AKA the Ethical Panda Fold, who's actually started streaming Pot Limit Omaha as well. As a not a beginner, not a novice in terms of learning the rules, but more of a beginner in terms of like learning strategy. They're streaming a like micro stakes, micros, and I'm going to be teaching them, which is part of the sort of martial arts philosophy of learning through teaching, right? Where you don't have to master something in order to try to pass that knowledge on. All right, let's see. We have an aggro player. Actually, we don't have too much of a read on them, right? Who has opened, and then we have a cold caller, an unknown in the small blind. I feel like these kings are a little weak to be 3-betting. I'm going to flat, but maybe I should be 3-betting more with the weaker kings to get more isolation with them. Really not sure. Fairly uncomfortable spot. I flop an overpair and an open-ended straight draw. Unfortunately, there's none in my suit. I'm going to... Oh, I already marked this one, right? No, I didn't. I'll mark that for review, and we'll come back to it. Okay, so I have an overpair and an open-ended straight draw, which isn't like a ton, but I feel like against a button who's very loose, this could be worth calling. If they hadn't bet pot, I'm definitely continuing here. My outs are to the nuts, which is nice. If my implied are there, I'm good. I think this is probably terrible. The the gist of my thinking is that this player might be like way over aggressive in a spot like this, but I really don't have the information to make that read. And do I want to just put it in or let them put it in? If they have Queen Jack or 8 Jack, I have the Jack, which is nice. So I'm blocking both straight draws. Both straights rather. I think I can get value here, but the problem is, I don't know. Is this too ambitious? Let's just do it. See, a smaller bet. You know what? We're gonna go a little smaller as a more of an exploit. Trying to get this player to call with like who knows what, maybe a hand like Queen 10 even. Ooh, Queen. Okay. So that was unlucky for them. I'm going to mark this hand because every decision felt questionable. Every decision. All right, if the ace was suited, this is a hand that I might play around with, but yeah, I think the small bet, I'm like, I see less than a pot size bet, and my first thought is like I can bet all in because it's almost pot sized, or I can check, but that's quite irrational, right? That's like discarding possibilities for no real reason. Like, will the solver always do it that way? I don't know. I don't think so either. I think it'll choose some smaller bet sizes as well. But thinking about their range, thinking about what I'm trying to get value from, I'm trying to get value from things that are weaker than a straight, and there's a lot of straights that are possible. So I think, just jamming it in probably would have been pretty irrational. And again, a kind of weakish kings that I'm going to call with. Kind of set mine, but not exactly. I do have the king high suit now and the king queen. The 4 is just a total trash card. And I get raised from behind. Let's see what these other people do. Yeah, queen, 10, 10, queen, 10. That was my thinking. There's not I feel like there's not enough money left behind for this to be. I don't know. I don't know how to play against three bets, unfortunately. Uh, and it feels like mostly we're trying to go like, what do I need? Oh, this is horrible. Yeah, so that's probably bad. Let's mark that one for review. I'm marking a lot more hands today. I think that's good. Um, yeah, I think let's see. What's that? You have good equity because sometimes yeah, my king outs. I mean, I have like maybe 10 outs, right, on the flop. I mean, the kings aren't full outs, but they're potential with the on the queen 10 high flop, and I have the king jack. So having the king definitely played into my thought process there, where there's some non-zero chance that my kings are just good because they have like a wrap with one pair that's lower than a king. But also, um, knowing that a king might be good if it got there. That's a good point. Yeah. So I was thinking my blocker, I'm blocking the straights, but on the flop, I should be thinking I'm also, I mean, the kings and the jack are blocking a lot of straight draws, so that will make them more made hand heavy, right? That makes a lot of sense. Old routine. Yeah, I think there's in terms of like repeatable and routines, I do think picking something that's going to stick is better than trying a bunch of different things, none of which stick, right? For a long time, I was doing 5 chess puzzles a day. First 3 chess puzzles a day, then 5 chess puzzles a day. And I got a lot better at chess puzzles and at recognizing tactics through that time. Just doing that over the course of years, really. I do Duolingo every day for 2 years, and it's not the ideal language learning tool. I definitely want to get more into speaking to actual humans and language acquisition as opposed to learning. But you know what? Like, I can read some Mandarin now just from doing that thing over and over and over. And the ease of repeatability with it and the fact that it's something that feels so easy to stick to, I think is a big part of how it's been helpful. you know, I mean, seeing what this person's done so far, I think we can just flip with them for 1037. Doesn't seem fantastic, and their ace queen high or their five is probably going to be good. Oh, no, no, runner to the straight. But I think once we put the three in, we've got 44% equity as it turned out, which wasn't a worst case scenario, but it wasn't a great scenario. I mean, I think it was pretty bad. I think it was you know, the hand kind of plays itself a little after that point. Oh, wow. Lost 70 pounds and taught my mom, and she did also lose 60 pounds. My sister and bro in law lost 15 pounds now. Small and repeatable, creating basic awareness really works. For sure. Uh, hmm. All right, so I'm not blocking an ace. So I think because of that, and I have no suits, I'm not going to three bet. However, I am going to flat. This hand looks like one of the better rainbow hands, if there's going to be any rainbow hands that I'm going to play. 654. Thinking about my range and their range, I'm going to have a bunch of rundowns that hit this, but I'm not blocking any of the straights, any of the straight draws, any of the pairs. I'm unblocking ace ace, which like I don't know what they're doing here, but I'm gonna fold anyway. But I'm definitely kind of giving them a little bit of side eye, where it's like, what are you trying to pretend you have? Like you have an 8-9 or something? Maybe check to gutter. Like 8-9-10 jack type hand. I can see not really wanting to put too much in on the flop. Um, so Yeah, I'm distracted in my mind thinking about weight loss now, which I'm near my maximum mass of my life. Not quite at it, but I'm trying some just kind of simple things. Like basically, I just stopped having sugar and stopped having caffeine. And not that caffeine is necessarily something that one shouldn't have. I do find it messes up my energy levels in general, but mostly when I consume caffeine, I usually want to consume it with copious amounts of sugar. So getting rid of that is as much just a way of getting, of actually sticking to not having sugar. And I think that's something that I can stick to, but again, it's one of those things where trying to have a negative habit, like trying to make a habit of not doing something isn't exactly a thing. So I've started having like an Asian pear every night. So like that's my dessert. And instead of, which has sugars in it, but they're better sugars. And I find it doesn't affect my blood sugar or my weight as much as something like, I don't know, a pint of non-dairy ice cream might. So a little bit less PLO focus in that, but at the same time, actually, I feel like we've gotten some interesting spots and some very good feedback from a player who is much better and more experienced at the game than I am. Which, I think a lot of players talking to a better player want to try to get like an answer, like, oh, tell me what to do here, tell me what to do here, and like, okay, cool, that's fine, but to me, it's more like in any given answer, there's some kernel of a thought that we weren't having, and sort of like more of like a wisdom than a knowledge, right? Like a way of looking at a situation that like, oh yeah, I wasn't thinking about how all of my blockers to the straight draws were blocking their draws, therefore they're going to be more value heavy. And that's just a thought that should probably boom, right? Like you look at your hand, you look at the board, and you think, oh well, I'm blocking this, and that's going to make them be more weighted this way. And so I really think I very much appreciate the feedback, and also I appreciate not just the how one player's insight on a situation can be a lot more valuable than just having an idea how to play that situation. Like you're not going to get exactly the same situation. You'll get some similar ones, but being able to take away that reminder, like, yeah, always think about how your blockers are affecting their range, not just in terms of the things on the board, but the potential draws and stuff like that. Which, at times feels more automatic than others, but just trying to make that an integral part of the thought process always. All right, I'm going to wrap up after this round and then take a very short break and then come back and do a session review. So yeah, this flop would have looked okay, but not necessarily that interesting. Okay. King Queen 5-4. That is tritone trash. What do they call it tritone? Yeah, tritone is funny because that's a flatted fifth in music. Maybe that's not how they call it. I forget. There's some terminology that didn't really stick because it didn't make the most sense to me. But I guess it's fine. With a suited ace, I'm pretty happy opening this hand in this spot. With the ace unsuited, it gets a lot worse. I mean, it's suited to the 5, so it's the worst combination of ace, queen, 5-4 single suited. This doesn't look like a great board for the out of position player. I think I might be over internalizing. Oh, hello, Ethical Panda. That is who I was referencing earlier in regards to someone with even less PLO experience than myself, but also the host of the wonderful Star Wars Universe podcast, which is different from the Star Wars Universe podcast. Let's see. I'll just mark that hand to review with the ace queen. Yes, the Bad Batch. Wait, why are the A's capitalized? I feel like there's something ba ba. I don't know. There's something clever going on there, but it's going over my head. And my hair's pretty short, so it's not getting stuck in my hair. How have the viewers been enjoying the Bad Batch so far? Not enough Sith or what? Oh, keyboard lag. Okay, yeah. I often capitalize the first two letters. That's my most common typo. I think is having that second letter capitalized for no reason. So I've got my little pre-flop guide here that is helpful, but I haven't spent enough time with it, and I think I should probably also have like multiple sources for trying to understand, um, you know, the pre-flop street of Pot Limit Omaha. So I'm just gonna look this hand up in my thing, and I'm pretty confident this is a fold in the cutoff. Like, I'm like pretty confident. Yeah. So, ace and two wheel cards. Oh, this is single suited though. Yeah. But it wants to play like ace king 4-3 with a king suit. The king's better than the queen, and a 5 high suit pretty much sucks here. So I'm going to say it's very comfortable fold in the cutoff. Whereas, oh, good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you for stopping by. Always welcome to. And I will actually write out one of the emails that I've typed in my head and talk to you soon. All right. So, button RFI. Yeah, ace king 5-4 rainbow it wants to play. So if you add a suit and you make the king a queen, I feel like that's probably that has to be better, right? Ace 5, ace 8 5 deuce. So yeah, I think there's a pretty clear button play, pretty clear cutoff fold. So all right, take care. So yeah, I think we're going to proceed to the next hand. I think that's a pretty comfortable fold there. King. What is it? Oh, because I didn't have that there yet. Okay, king queen 4. First question: when there's a raise in the low jack, I generally don't want to play hands that I wouldn't have raised in the low jack. I think makes some sense. I need to definitely. I wonder if this spot is in something like the PLO matrix though. There's probably this spot with a raise and a fold, but there might not be a thing with a raise and a cold call, right? Because, but maybe there is. So I will dig into that at some point. But for the time being, let's just look. Do I open kings with a suited queen, or it's suited to a king? King, queen 4, right? And I'm going to say probably, I think. Yeah, it wants to open most of the suited kings. So king 5-4 with a suit to the 5 it's going to open. So if it's doing that, we definitely are going to be opening this hand. And so, do we want to 3-bet this? I don't really have any clear way of trying to ascertain that. Kings we often do want to 3-bet, but I think against a low jack, probably if we're going to 3-bet kings, I think we want an ace in there to block their 4-betting range. That would be my first thought. So this feels like a fairly poor 3-bet. Also, I think the queen might be bad in terms of we don't want to bet be blocking their queen, which is maybe something we'd particularly like them to have if we have king. And then the 4 is just a very bad card. So, this is not near the top of kings. This is, I think, somewhere in the midland of, quality of kings. Maybe upper middle. I don't know. All right. So what happened from here is this. Oh, and then this. So the player behind us has not that much money. We can back raise and like jam. And since the open raiser didn't 4-bet, I'm kind of tempted to do that because I feel like they don't have ace that often. But if we run into aces from the button, actually we'd be getting a nice overlay, right? We'd be getting basically 2-1 because of all the dead money. There's like 20 in there, and we're putting in 22 and another 22 from them. So we'd only need like 33% equity if we could get that one player to fold. So I kind of think this would be a really interesting back jam, but pretty weird. So that's just a thought on that hand. Again, not really able to come up with a conclusive answer. That's one of the things is like, in terms of just pure RFI range, I can find answers, but I can't really find an answer in terms of these more complicated situations with the tools I currently have available. I can just give the situation some thought, and that thought will probably help in the future, but it's not going to be as concrete as when we get that like binary feedback of like, yes, this is correct, no, this is incorrect. All right, so better kings here. I think I like a 3-bet, but again, these are good-ish kings, like midland kings. I feel we're suited to the jack, not the king. The 3 is a useless card, but we do have kings, a suit, and a connector. So I think in this spot, flatting makes sense, and then we get another flat. Basically, we get to take a flop multi-way and try and flop a set, or in this case, an open-ended straight draw, which I don't think betting out here is great. We're not blocking any of the sets, any of the 2-pair. Probably not going to be a lot of, top and bottom 2-pair sort of things, except maybe from the big blind. But when the button bets, Daniel made a really good point earlier in chat that I'm blocking all of the, the open-enders. I'm triple blocking King Jack. I'm blocking Jack 9. I'm blocking all these wrap things. So they're going to be weighted more towards Queen, 10, 10, and Queen 10, which against those, my king is going to be pretty good. So I think I like my call. They're, the fact that it's a full pot bet, I think weights them even more towards the sets, although top 2 also might want to go ahead and full pot here. Should they be betting this large? They basically turned it into a 2-street game, right? Where if the turn's a brick, then they can just jam. And the turn is very much not a brick, and they do not jam. I was considering jamming here basically just to be like, okay, if you've got, Queen, 10, 10, or Queen 10, let's just put the money in. I don't have a super high level of respect for my opponent in terms of thinking that they're playing a very well-reasoned out, game. I don't disrespect them as a person. That's a totally unconnected concept. But having my jack here makes me feel a little bit better about potentially betting. But at the same time, letting them put the money in seems okay-ish. If they have ace-jack, what is my equity? Off the top of my head, I've got 10 outs to boat up or better, and then 3 chop outs. So that's basically like 11.5 outs times, 2.5% or so, 25 plus, getting close to 30% equity. If they jam, I think I can, and they showed me ace jack, it would be pretty close. So if they jam, I think I have an easy call. And I did go for the more exploitative, smaller bet on the river, trying to squeeze a bet out of Queen, 10, 10, or Queen 10, right? And did, they called with queens. Whether they would have called with 10s or Queen 10, I don't know. Maybe even a hand like King, Queen, if they had something like that. They could have like King, Queen, Jack, something like that. Although not a lot of kings left in the deck. All right, so I'm pretty happy with this hand. I also feel like I've learned something about it in terms of like reminding myself, always check that, I'll always think about your blockers, right? And how that blocks your opponent's range, not just in terms of made hands, right? We also want to consider how much we're blocking draws and how that will weight them more towards made hands or unblocking draws, right? Okay, so 10, 10, 8, 5. I didn't really have any thoughts about this hand in terms of facing a raise, but I was thinking, I think this is a clear button raise, and I think it's sort of cuspy in the cutoff with a really loose player behind me. Maybe I want to fold it, but I do want to look this one up and kind of use that as a data point to help calibrate, my approach in these spots. So with a single suit, they're doing like ace 10, 10, 4, jack 10, 10, deuce. I think this hand is better than jack 10, 10, deuce, right? With a suit to the 10. Because jack 10, 10, deuce, yeah, the jack 10 is better than the 10, 8, but the deuce is just such a bad card. It's like you're playing a 3-card hand. So here, we're playing a 4-card hand, right? The 8 and the 5 can flop a straight. We can have some sort of wrappy things, right? Or no, I guess if it's 9, 8, the 5 isn't really going to play that much with anything with the 10. But I do think this is going to be like barely playable, and I think it is accurately cuspy. And as I've said before, I think it's more important to that you can first identify what hands are close. And if you know something's close, then if you do it right or do it wrong, that's less of a big deal than if you just have no idea what's close, then you're going to make some much larger mistakes. But against the raise, I think pretty clear fold. Moving on. King 10, 10, 9. Okay, so this was a hand that I felt very comfortable about. I think the raise is super clear. I'm double suited. I've got, you know, King 10, 9 in terms of connectivity, and my monitor just went black for no apparent reason. Okay, it's back now. And, you know, I'm double suited, and I have the pair of nines. So it seems like a pretty clear spot to put more chips in. And, I mean, the button folded, so maybe if the big blind folded, I could have taken this down without a flop. I don't know. But the flop comes ace, king, 7, rainbow. I'm not too clear on how I should be playing blind versus blind here. I think my opponent's going to have quite a wide range. They're not going to have any ace ace, and I'm going to have ace ace. And I should probably have more king king because I think they'll 3-bet that a fair amount. Also, I'm blocking king king. I'm blocking ace king. I think hands with ace king in them are going to 3-bet some. So I can see how this is a board that kind of belongs to me, and I should be able to c-bet a fair amount of the time. You know, I think I've been checking too much in spots like this, and I'm not totally whiffing the board, right? I have a pair of kings, which isn't great in terms of showdown value, but has some blocking value and some showdown value. I do have a backdoor flush draw. I've got backdoor straight outs. So I decide to check, and they check, and then the turn's a 7. You know, whether it's better to c-bet the flop or maybe bet the turn. I think once I check and they bet, I'm very happy with my fold. I don't think I should be playing this hand like as a bluff catcher or anything, but maybe as a sort of semi-bluffing flop hand. I can see the merit. And there's going to be some good turn cards, right? A king, a 10, or a 9 are all pretty good. A heart has some value. An 8 gives me an open-ender. So I can see why maybe I want to be c-betting hands like this. Okay. But once I decide to play it passively, I think on this run out, I think folding makes a lot of sense. Okay, Jack, Jack, 7, 5. I decide to overlimp. You know, am I opening this from the button? I'm pretty sure I'm opening this from the button, right? And obviously I didn't open and I didn't raise, but I want to see like at least Jack, Jack, 7, 6 rainbow. So this actually, according to my chart, would be a slight fold, would basically be barely a fold, right? Because although the 7 and the 6 and the 5 don't make that much difference, because the 7, 6 doesn't have a bunch of added utility when you have the Jack 7, because if you catch the bottom end, if it comes like 10, 9, 8, you're not really the 7, 6, the 6 doesn't play with the 7, right? The only times the 6 plays with the 7 is when you make the smaller straights, and you can make the same smaller straights, right, with the 7, 5. And are all those nutty? No, you can make a non-nut straight. So the 6 is a little better, but not as much better because we've got that triple gapper above it. But, you know, overlimping with this very loose and raising enough hands that I think that their range isn't very strong when they limp, right? Because they're getting rid of some of those good hands. Although I wouldn't mind them having some of those good hands, honestly, if I'm trying to flop a set of jacks. But then the player behind me, a little erratic, and they do raise, and it folds to me. And I decide to take a flop. I'm kind of like on this. Once I decided to call, I think getting a pot in position against this player where they might have a pretty strong range and I might be able to flop big enough and just stack them. Basically, I'm playing this hand because I want to try and stack them. And I think it's, you know, okay-ish. Definitely very, very borderline feeling. With some better jacks, I think I feel much more comfortable about it. I flop a double gutter, not blocking any of the pairs. You know, are they checking hands like ace, ace, or king X here? I could maybe just take a stab on the flop because, you know, getting back to the blockers, I'm blocking diamond draws. I'm blocking, you know, my jacks block Jack 10. My 7 and 5 block the lower wraps. which their hand, range shouldn't really be weighted towards those. But I think they're going to have a lot of big card misses, maybe some like queen queen 10-10 type deals. So I don't hate the idea of betting the flop basically because I've got blockers to their continue range. Having said that, I'm getting a free look at, a few outs to the nuts with a 10, some outs to the second nuts, which are probably good if a 6 comes out, and, maybe spiking a jack. So I think the free card has value. They make a sizable bet on the turn, and I think it's a pretty straightforward fold. Maybe there's some subtlety here where now I want to, like, I have jacks and maybe I think that they're good some amount of the time, and I have my double gutters, but none of those are to the nuts, right? So it feels kind of dicey, and I'm never going to be in a really strong river position, so I fold. All right, moving on. 8-7-6-5. I decided to open raise this. It was pointed out in the chat that this is probably a little loose, especially in a loose atmosphere like this, where we're probably going to end up paying rake. We're probably going to be playing this hand out of position. Having something more like a jack high run down with this, or a 10 high double suited run down. Let me take a peek at the recommendations, and single suited, zero gappers. So my chart says 7-6-5-4 suited to the 5. So this hand is a little better than the minimum one recommended, right? But the recommendations are agnostic, like no further data, just like basically in a 1-2 game where nothing else about any of your opponents, this is the balanced way to play. Exploitatively, we maybe want to fold, also we have to consider the rates a little higher, but exploitatively, maybe we don't want to get ourselves in these sorts of situations where we know our opponents are going to make mistakes against our range, but those mistakes might not be as much mistakes against our actual hands, where if we play a little bit narrower range, we're just going to basically be able to smash them post-flop against their absurd ranges. So I feel good that I hewed to the standards in my chart, but at the same time I can take a little bit of a lesson away where, maybe in a spot like this, just tighten up a little bit tighter than the chart says. But so, I don't feel bad about this open. I feel pretty bad about this flop, even though I have that 6 card straight that I joked about earlier. Doesn't really do me any good. I don't think I'm going to be like, this isn't a situation where you just want to bet the bottom of your range. There's a lot of decent turn cards for me. That's not one of them. I just continue giving up, and we get to the river, and I guess I could rep aces full here. I could maybe play it this way with the ace of hearts, ace of spades, and just nothing else going. And but I'm unblocking anything that might want to call. And I end up checking and they bet, and I think that's okay. But interesting bluffing spot where my cards don't contribute to any kind of coherent bluff or to any sort of blocking, but my my line, it's I could at least have an ace, right? I could at least have ace king or ace jack maybe. So I think making some sort of a bluff on the river in the spot anyway, forgetting about my own cards, I think makes some sense. It just looks credible, someone should believe it. Okay, ace queen 10-8 with one suit. I want to double check that under the gun. I think it's maybe a little, what would you call this? This is an other, no, this is an ace with 2 broadways, right? So ace jack 10-7 they're gonna play. Ace queen 10-8 seems about as good as that. So I think this is probably a hand that I should play in the low jack as well. Although, having discussed in an environment like this with a high rake and very loose players, maybe this is the sort of hand that I'm going to drop off in the low jack, which is, one more player remaining behind me if we were first to act at a 6-handed table, whereas here I'm first to act at a 5-handed table. If the ace is suited, then I'm definitely going to open that in all positions in a 6-max game. All right, so I raise, I get 2 callers, and I flop top, which generally isn't super super awesome in PLO, but like this board is like, okay, my opponents played all their hands, so they can have all of the two pairs and all of the sets and everything. But in general, looking at this board, like there's not going to be a lot of two pair combos, and the bottom sets, people are going to fold more pairs of fives and threes, and I'm blocking top set. So I feel pretty confident putting a value bet out here. I'm betting half pot kind of because I'm not really sure exactly what else to bet. I think a third pot would make some sense as well. It's a very dry board. So, I mean, it's like almost as dry as they can come. You know, maybe make the five a seven and a three a deuce, and it's a little drier. But I get called by the very loose player behind me, and I pick up some outs to some stronger hands on the turn, none of which are the nuts. I do think betting here again is pretty logical. I think I have a little bit too much fear of my opponent like slow playing something or popping me on the turn. I think making another half pot bet on the turn would make a lot of sense. Like, yeah, you don't want to build a lot of big pots with non-nutty hands, but on the other hand, in this spot, I really do. I'm doing pretty well against their range, right? They've got four cards. That's basically all we know about them. And there's a reasonable chance they're going to make some two pair hands, but I should probably give them a chance to fold a hand like ace 2 3 6 or whatever. That hand would probably call the turn against a half pot bet if they knew my hand, but they might not call it against a bet where they don't know what my hand is. And then here the river's a deuce. I do think betting like $2, $3, $4 or something makes some sense as like a blocker to just get value from who knows what from this very loose player. But the deuce is kind of bad where ace 4 got there, 4 6 got there, so all the wraps made straights. And this player is going to have far more deuce X, as I said earlier, I think, than most players would turn up with. So I check and they check, and my hand... No, they had kings. That's right. So they did have a deuce, but they had kings. So, I don't know. I guess I saved money. I think they definitely would have called the river bet. Like, if I'm trying to value bet ace queen, they're not... they're not folding kings, or if they are, then it's not a very good value bet. So, you know, this hand worked out fine. I was expecting to lose to two pair if I lost to like a check back, but then they showed up with kings. But you know, you look at these are pretty bad kings, right? I mean, the king and the 10 connect. There's no suits. The deuce is garbage. So, all right, last hand of the day. There's an open raise, and I'm next to act with ace 9 8 3. So first question in terms of the data I have available is, would I open raise this in the low jack? And I'm going to say yes, I would. Now I'm going to look at the chart and see whether the chart would, right? Two middling cards with the suited ace. So ace 3 7 6, it wants to open raise. Now the 7 and the 6 connect with the 3, whereas the 8 and the 9 do not. But the 8 and the 9 are higher. Ace jack 9 6. I think this is probably fine under the gun, but like kind of close-ish. Would I rather have 7 6 3 or just like 9 8? I'm not totally sure, but I think if one's close, then the other has to be close as well. So I would probably open this in the low jack. I would definitely open it in the high jack, right? If it's close in the low jack, it's clearly going to be a play in the high jack. But against an open raise, I'm just going to pitch it. It's not... it's going to flop well sometimes, but not that often. If I were in the button, maybe, right? Like if I were the button and then this player behind me was like the big blind or the small blind, then I could kind of start to get on board with playing it. But here I think it's pretty clear fold. And yeah, that's it for this review session. And I guess that's it for the video and the stream today. So once again, thank you very much for watching. It's been fun getting a lot of feedback and interaction. That is always welcome. Thank you all so much for stopping by. If you take a moment to hit the like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, and on Twitch, you know, giving a follow is super helpful. I'm just trying to build habits and build a little bit of a following, and it's fun having people to talk to while playing poker. So it turns a very solitary experience into more of a social experience, and gives a little bit of accountability in terms of creating content and doing, you know, buckling down and doing a session review every day. So thanks again. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I'll be streaming every day at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Cheers.